The evening sun was setting as Staff Sergeant James Cooper guided his old Honda Civic into the nearly empty rest stop. His tired eyes caught the time on his dashboard, 7:45 p.m. He had been driving for almost 12 hours straight, stopping only for gas and quick bathroom breaks. The rest area, located on a quiet stretch of highway between Pennsylvania and Ohio, looked peaceful with its tall pine trees and simple brick buildings. Cooper had just finished his third tour in Afghanistan, and all he could think about was getting home to his family in Columbus, Ohio. His wife Sarah and their 8-year-old daughter Emma didn't know he was coming home early. He wanted to surprise them. In his pocket, he carried Emma's favorite candy bar, a simple chocolate treat he had picked up at the last gas station. The fall weather was getting cooler, and Cooper could see his breath in the evening air as he stepped out of his car. He was still wearing his combat uniform, not having packed any civilian clothes for the drive. His boots made soft sounds on the concrete as he stretched his tired muscles. 15 months in the harsh mountains of Afghanistan had changed him, made him stronger, more alert, and always aware of his surroundings. As Cooper looked around the rest stop, something caught his attention. In the far corner of the parking lot, partly hidden in the shadows of the building, stood 5 motorcycles. They were big machines, custom painted with chrome that sparkled even in the dim light. The bikes weren't what bothered him. It was the way they were parked, positioned to block anyone trying to leave in a hurry. The rest area was strangely quiet for this time of evening. Usually, these stops would have at least a few travelers, families in minivans, or truck drivers taking their required breaks. But tonight, Cooper could only see one other car, an old station wagon whose driver was sleeping in the front seat. The silence made the hair on the back of his neck stand up, a feeling he had learned to trust during his time in the service. Walking towards the restroom building, Cooper noticed the security camera above the entrance was hanging loose, its wires exposed. Someone had clearly tampered with it. His military training kicked in, and he began to notice other small details. Fresh cigarette butts near the vending machines, the sound of low voices coming from around the corner, and the smell of leather and motorcycle exhaust in the air. Cooper's muscles tensed slightly, but his face remained calm. As a Special Forces soldier, he had been trained to handle dangerous situations without showing fear or anxiety. He had survived firefights in narrow mountain passes, led his team through hostile villages, and protected civilians in the most dangerous parts of Afghanistan. Now, standing in this quiet American rest stop, he felt the same alertness he had felt in combat zones. The soldier stopped at the water fountain, taking a slow drink while using its reflection to scan the area behind him. Through the distorted metal surface, he saw them, 3 large men in leather vests moving out from behind the building. They walked with the kind of confidence that comes from intimidating others, spreading out in a way that reminded Cooper of wolf packs hunting their prey. Cooper straightened up, rolling his shoulders to ease the stiffness from driving. He didn't want trouble. His only goal was to get home to his family. But 15 years in the Army, including 8 in Special Forces, had taught him to be ready for anything. His combat training was second nature now, like breathing. He could handle himself if things went wrong, but he hoped it wouldn't come to that. As he turned towards the restroom door, Cooper heard heavy boots on concrete getting closer. The sound echoed in the quiet evening air, along with low laughter that had no humor in it. He knew without looking that the 3 men were walking towards him. The peaceful rest stop was about to become something else entirely, and Staff Sergeant James Cooper would soon have to make some very important decisions. The 3 bikers moved closer to Cooper, their heavy boots scraping against the concrete. The biggest one, who stood about 6'4" with a thick beard and arms covered in tattoos, wore a leather vest with patches that marked him as the group's leader. His name patch read Snake, and his vest showed membership in the notorious Road Killer Motorcycle Club. Snake's 2 friends weren't much smaller. The one on the left had a shaved head and a long scar running down his cheek, while the other wore a bandana and had brass knuckles hanging from his belt loop. They moved like men used to frightening people, confident that their size and reputation would do most of the work for them. Cooper kept his face neutral as he watched their reflection in the restroom building's windows. He had dealt with worse in Afghanistan: tribal warlords, armed insurgents, and enemy fighters who actually knew what they were doing. These 3 might be big, but Cooper could see they were sloppy. They didn't check their surroundings, didn't maintain proper spacing, and clearly didn't expect any real resistance. Well, what do we have here?" Snake's voice was rough, like gravel in a blender. Looks like we got ourselves a real-life hero. He spat the last word like it was poison in his mouth. The other two bikers chuckled, spreading out to block any escape routes. Cooper turned slowly, his movements calm and controlled. He had been in enough situations like this to know that showing fear or anger would only make things worse. His eyes scanned each man quickly, noting their positions, their stances, and most importantly, any weapons they might be carrying. Besides the brass knuckles, he spotted a chain hanging from Snake's belt and what looked like a knife handle peeking out of the scarred man's boot. "Evening, gentlemen," Cooper said quietly, his voice steady. "There's no need for any trouble here." He kept his hands visible but ready, his feet shoulder-width apart in what looked like a casual stance, but would let him move quickly if needed. Snake stepped closer, trying to use his height to intimidate Cooper. The smell of cheap beer and cigarettes rolled off him in waves. "You military types think you're so special, don't you? Walking around in your fancy uniform, thinking you're better than everyone else." He looked back at his friends, encouraging them with a sneer. "Maybe we need to teach you some manners." The scarred man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the brick walls. "Yeah, boss. Let's show him what real fighting is about." His hand moved slowly toward his boot, where the knife handle stuck out. Cooper noticed a young couple walking from their car toward the rest stop. When they saw what was happening, they quickly turned around and hurried back to their vehicle. Good, he thought. Fewer civilians meant fewer potential casualties if things went bad. "Last chance," Cooper said calmly. "We can all walk away from this, and nobody needs to get hurt." He watched as Snake's face turned red with anger. These kinds of men always hated it when their targets didn't show fear. "You hear that, boys?" Snake growled. "The soldier boy thinks he can tell us what to do." He cracked his knuckles loudly, a theatrical gesture that made Cooper almost want to smile. In Afghanistan, real fighters didn't waste time with shows like this. The sun had almost set now, casting long shadows across the rest stop. The parking lot lights flickered on, their harsh fluorescent glow creating sharp shadows on the concrete. Cooper could hear crickets chirping in the distance, a peaceful sound that seemed out of place in this tense moment. Snake took another step forward, now just inches from Cooper. "I'm going to enjoy this," he snarled, his right hand curling into a fist. "Nobody comes into our territory and tells us what to do, especially not some government puppet who." Cooper noticed the subtle shift in Snake's weight, the slight tensing of his shoulders. He had seen these signs countless times in combat. Snake was about to throw the first punch, and once he did, there would be no going back. The peaceful evening at this quiet rest stop was about to become very unpleasant for these three bikers who had chosen the wrong soldier to harass. Snake's fist came flying toward Cooper's face in a wild, angry punch. But Cooper wasn't there anymore. 15 years of military training had taught him how to move, how to react, and most importantly, how to survive. He shifted his head just 2 inches to the left, and Snake's fist hit nothing but air. The big biker's eyes widened in surprise. Nobody had ever moved that fast against him before. Before he could pull his arm back, Cooper grabbed his wrist and redirected Snake's momentum, using the biker's own weight against him. With a simple twist and push, Snake found himself face first against the brick wall of the rest stop building, his arm locked behind his back. "I told you we didn't need trouble," Cooper said calmly, holding Snake in place without seeming to use much effort. His voice remained steady, just as it had when he led his team through dangerous missions in Afghanistan. The scarred biker yanked the knife from his boot and charged forward with an angry yell. Cooper had been expecting this. In one smooth motion, he pushed Snake aside and stepped away from the knife attack. The scarred man's charge took him past Cooper, his balance thrown off by his own speed. The third biker, the one with the bandana and brass knuckles, circled around trying to get behind Cooper. But Cooper had been trained to handle multiple attackers. He kept moving, never letting himself get trapped between them. In Afghanistan, he learned that staying still meant death. Snake had recovered and was now pulling the chain from his belt, wrapping it around his fist. His face was red with rage and embarrassment. "You're dead, soldier boy," he shouted, swinging the chain in a wide arc. Cooper waited for the perfect moment, timing his move with the precision that had kept him alive in combat. As the chain swung past, he stepped inside Snake's guard. His elbows struck upward, catching Snake under the chin. The big biker's teeth clicked together and his eyes went unfocused. The scarred man came in again with his knife, but this time Cooper was ready. He caught the man's wrist, twisted hard, and the knife clattered to the ground. In the same motion, Cooper swept the biker's legs out from under him. The man hit the concrete with a heavy thud, all the air rushing from his lungs. The biker with the brass knuckles had more sense than his friends. He hesitated, seeing how quickly Cooper had handled the others. But pride and loyalty made him attack anyway. He threw a series of punches, the brass knuckles glinting under the parking lot lights. Cooper blocked each punch with his forearms, the same way he practiced thousands of times in training. The brass knuckles hurt, but pain was an old friend to a soldier. He waited for the right opening, and when the biker threw a wide punch, Cooper struck. His first hit was to the biker's solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. The second strike, an open palm hit to the man's chest, sent him stumbling backward. The third biker fell hard, gasping for breath, the brass knuckles falling from his fingers. Snake tried to get up again, still wrapped in his tough guy image. Cooper ended that quickly with a precise strike to a pressure point in the big man's shoulder. Snake's arm went numb, and he dropped back to his knees, looking shocked and confused. The entire fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. Cooper stood calmly among the three fallen bikers, his breathing barely elevated. He hadn't even broken a sweat. In the distance, he could hear police sirens approaching. Someone must have called them when the fight started. Next time, Cooper said, looking at each of the groaning men, pick on someone who hasn't been trained by the United States Army to handle much worse than you. He straightened his uniform and checked his watch. The whole incident had barely delayed his journey home. As red and blue lights began flashing at the entrance to the rest stop, Cooper allowed himself a small smile. These bikers had made a serious mistake tonight, thinking that a soldier in uniform would be an easy target. They had learned the hard way that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who don't look for trouble, but are more than ready when trouble finds them. 2 police cars pulled into the rest stop, their lights painting the scene in alternating red and blue. The first car to arrive was driven by State Trooper Mike Sullivan, a 20-year veteran of the force. Behind him came Trooper Sarah Martinez, who was only 2 years into her service but already known for her sharp eye and good judgment. Cooper stood quietly, hands visible at his sides, as the officers approached. Around him, the 3 bikers were still on the ground, groaning and trying to recover their dignity. Snake's chain lay twisted on the concrete, and the knife the scarred man had dropped gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Evening, officers," Cooper said calmly, using the same respectful tone he'd used with superior officers in the military. "I'm Staff Sergeant James Cooper, U.S. Army Special Forces. I got my military ID right here." He moved slowly, making sure the officers could see his hands as he reached for his wallet. Trooper Sullivan nodded, taking in the scene with experienced eyes. He noticed Cooper's neat uniform, the fallen weapons, and the security camera that had been tampered with. "Anyone care to explain what happened here?" he asked, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. Snake tried to stand up, his legs shaky. "This soldier attacked us for no reason," he shouted, but even he didn't sound convinced by his own lies. "We were just minding our own business and—" "That's interesting," Trooper Martinez cut in, pointing to her patrol car. "Because we got dash cam footage of you 3 following that young couple who called this in. They said you were threatening people at the rest stop." The young couple Cooper had seen earlier stepped out of their car. The husband, a thin man in his 20s, walked forward nervously. "Officers, we saw the whole thing. Those bikers surrounded the soldier. He tried to talk them down, but they attacked him first. He was defending himself." More witnesses began approaching. A truck driver who'd been sleeping in his cab, an elderly couple who'd been too scared to leave their RV, and the station wagon driver Cooper had noticed earlier. They all told the same story. The bikers had been terrorizing people at the rest stop all evening until Cooper arrived. Trooper Sullivan walked over to Snake, who was still trying to look tough despite his obvious pain. "Let me see some ID," he demanded. When Snake reluctantly handed over his wallet, Sullivan's eyes narrowed. Well, Jason Snake Miller, you got quite a record here." Trooper Martinez was checking the other 2 bikers' IDs and speaking into her radio. Her face grew serious as she listened to the response. "Mike," she called to her partner. These guys matched the description of suspects in 3 other rest stop assaults in the past week. Highway patrol's been looking for them. Cooper watched as the officers handcuffed the 3 bikers, reading them their rights. Snake kept glaring at him, but the tough guy act was gone, replaced by the look of someone who knew they'd made a very big mistake. "Staff Sergeant," Trooper Sullivan said, walking back to Cooper, "we're going to need your statement. But first, I want to thank you. These guys have been causing trouble up and down the highway for weeks. Nobody's been able to stop them until now." As Cooper gave his statement to Trooper Martinez, more police cars arrived. Officers began taking photos of the scene, collecting the weapons, and interviewing witnesses. The young couple who had called the police came over to thank Cooper personally. "We saw them harassing an old lady earlier," the wife said, her voice shaking slightly. "We were too scared to do anything. But you stood up to them, you protected everyone here." Cooper just nodded modestly. "It's what we're trained to do, ma'am, protect people who need help." He checked his watch again. He was running later than planned, but his family would understand when he told them the story. The rest stop was now full of activity, with police lights flashing and officers moving around purposefully. The 3 bikers were secured in separate patrol cars, their tough image completely shattered by a single soldier who had refused to be intimidated. As Trooper Martinez finished taking Cooper's statement, a black SUV with FBI markings pulled into the rest stop. 2 agents stepped out, their badges gleaming under the parking lot lights. The taller agent, who introduced himself as Special Agent David Chen, walked directly toward Cooper and the state troopers. "Staff Sergeant Cooper," Agent Chen said, shaking his hand firmly. "I'm glad we caught up with you. Those 3 bikers you took down, they're part of something much bigger than just rest stop harassment." Cooper listened as Agent Chen explained that the Road Killers Motorcycle Club had been under FBI investigation for months. They weren't just ordinary troublemakers. They were part of a larger criminal organization involved in drug trafficking, weapons smuggling, and extortion along the interstate highways. These rest stops were their meeting points. Agent Chen continued, spreading out some photos on the hood of his car. They'd use them to exchange illegal goods, and they'd harass innocent travelers to keep people away during their operations. "Your actions tonight didn't just stop 3 bullies, you helped us crack open a major case." The scarred biker, now sitting in the back of a police car, had started talking to save himself. He was telling Trooper Sullivan about hidden storage units, secret meeting locations, and names of other gang members. Snake, watching from another patrol car, looked like he wanted to strangle his former friend. "We've been trying to build a case against them for months," the second FBI agent, Sarah Wong, explained. "But people were too scared to testify. Now, with all these witnesses willing to come forward about tonight, plus the evidence we already have, we can finally shut down their entire operation." The elderly couple who had been hiding in their RV brought Cooper a cup of coffee. The old man, his hand slightly shaking, turned out to be a Korean War veteran. "When I saw how you handled those thugs," he said proudly, "I knew right away you were Special Forces. You've got that same look my unit's sergeant had, calm under pressure, but ready for anything." Cooper accepted the coffee with thanks, listening as more details emerged. The truck driver who had witnessed everything told the officers about other rest stops where he'd seen similar incidents. The young couple shared videos they'd taken on their phones, providing clear evidence of the bikers' aggressive behavior. Trooper Martinez came over with some surprising news. "We just got word from headquarters," she said. "After we ran their motorcycles' serial numbers, we found out 3 of them were stolen. We're also finding weapons and drugs hidden in their saddlebags." The night had turned into something much bigger than Cooper had expected. What started as a simple stop on his way home had helped law enforcement crack a criminal organization that had been terrorizing people for months. Agent Chen pulled Cooper aside. "Staff Sergeant, I know you probably just want to get home to your family, but I have to ask. Would you be willing to testify if this goes to court? Your military background and combat experience would make you a very credible witness." Cooper thought about his wife and daughter waiting at home. He hadn't planned on getting involved in an FBI case, but he remembered all the innocent people these criminals had frightened and hurt. "Yes, sir," he answered. "If you need me to testify, I'll be there." The rest stop was now filled with law enforcement vehicles. Local news vans were starting to arrive, their reporters eager to cover the story of how one soldier had helped bring down a criminal organization. But Cooper wasn't interested in publicity or praise. Looking at his watch again, Cooper realized it was getting late. Agent Chen noticed and smiled. "Don't worry, Sergeant. We got your contact information. You should get home to your family. They'll be proud when they hear what you did tonight." As Cooper walked back to his car, several officers and agents snapped to attention and saluted him. The elderly Korean War veteran did the same, his eyes shining with pride. Cooper returned their salutes sharply, honored by their respect but knowing he had simply done what any soldier would do: protect those who needed protection. As Cooper was getting ready to leave, a local news van pulled up to the rest stop, its bright lights illuminating the scene. The reporter, Lisa Chen from Channel 7 News, rushed over with her camera crew, hoping to get the first interview with the soldier who had single-handedly taken down 3 dangerous criminals. "Staff Sergeant Cooper," Lisa called out, holding her microphone. "Could you tell our viewers what happened here tonight? Our sources say you stopped a major criminal operation." Cooper politely shook his head. He wasn't interested in becoming a TV star. "Ma'am, I'm just a soldier who wanted to use the restroom and get home to his family. The real heroes are the law enforcement officers who've been working this case for months." But the story was already spreading. Other travelers at the rest stop had recorded parts of the incident on their phones, and the videos were going viral on social media. People were sharing clips of Cooper calmly handling 3 aggressive bikers with the skilled moves of a trained soldier. Trooper Sullivan watched the growing media circus with amusement. In his 20 years on the force, he'd never seen anything quite like this. "You know, Sergeant," he said to Cooper, "my son wants to join the Army when he graduates. Would you mind if I took a quick photo with you? It would mean a lot to him." Cooper agreed to the photo, standing straight in his uniform next to the smiling trooper. As they posed, more people gathered around, wanting to shake Cooper's hand or get their own pictures. The elderly Korean War veteran proudly told anyone who would listen about how Cooper's fighting style reminded him of his old unit. Agent Chen was busy coordinating with other FBI teams over his phone. "We're getting reports from 5 different states," he announced. "Thanks to the information from our suspects, we've already arrested 12 more gang members. This is turning into one of the biggest organized crime busts of the year." The young couple who had first called the police were being interviewed by another news crew. "We were so scared," the wife explained, "but that soldier stood up to them like it was nothing. He was so calm, so professional. He's a real American hero." Cooper couldn't help but smile at that. In Afghanistan, he'd led missions that had saved entire villages from terrorists. But he'd never gotten this much attention. Now he was being called a hero for stopping 3 bikers at a rest stop. Lisa Chen wasn't giving up on her interview. "Staff Sergeant, our viewers would love to hear from a real American hero. Could you at least tell us about your military training? How did it prepare you for this situation?" Finally, Cooper decided to say a few words, but not about himself. "The U.S. Army teaches us to protect those who need protection," he explained. "But the real story here isn't about me. It's about all the ordinary citizens who were brave enough to stand up and testify. It's about the law enforcement officers who work every day to keep our highways safe." The FBI agents were still discovering more evidence in the bikers' belongings. They found maps marking other rest stops along the interstate, lists of contact numbers, and detailed schedules for drug deliveries. What had started as a simple confrontation was unraveling a criminal network that stretched across multiple states. Agent Wong approached Cooper with a business card. "The Bureau could use someone with your skills and character, Staff Sergeant. When you finish your military service, give us a call. We're always looking for good people." Cooper thanked her and tucked the card into his pocket. The night had taken so many unexpected turns, but all he could think about was getting home to his family. He checked his phone and saw several missed calls from his wife. She must be wondering why he was so late. As more news vans arrived and the crowd around the rest stop grew larger, Cooper knew it was time to leave. He had done his duty, helped break up a criminal organization, and now it was time to return to what mattered most: his family waiting at home. Finally breaking away from the chaos at the rest stop, Cooper got back into his Honda Civic and started the engine. The clock on his dashboard showed 10:30 p.m., almost 3 hours later than he planned to leave. As he pulled out of the rest stop, he could still see the flashing lights of police cars and news vans in his rearview mirror. Using his hands-free device, Cooper called his wife Sarah. She answered on the first ring, her voice filled with worry. "James, where are you? I've been trying to reach you for hours." "I'm okay, honey," Cooper assured her, smiling as he heard Emma, his daughter, asking in the background if that was Daddy on the phone. "I ran into a little situation at a rest stop. You might see it on the news tonight." As he drove through the dark highway, Cooper briefly explained what had happened. Sarah gasped when he mentioned the bikers, but then laughed when he told her how quickly he'd handled them. "Only you would stop for a bathroom break and end up helping the FBI crack a criminal organization," she said, the pride evident in her voice. "Daddy, Daddy." Emma's voice came through the speaker. "Are you really going to be on TV? My teacher says soldiers are heroes. Did you fight bad guys like in the movies?" Cooper chuckled. "Not quite like the movies, sweetheart. Real soldiers try to avoid fights if they can, but sometimes we have to protect people who need help." He could hear Emma excitedly telling her mother that her daddy was a superhero. As he drove, Cooper's phone kept buzzing with notifications. The videos of the incident were spreading rapidly across social media. His old army buddies were already sending him messages, some teasing him about becoming famous, others praising his handling of the situation. The night had grown cold, and a light rain began to fall. Cooper turned on his wipers and thought about how differently his evening had turned out from what he planned. He just wanted a quiet drive home after 15 months in Afghanistan. Instead, he helped break up a criminal operation that had been terrorizing people for months. A text message came from Agent Chen. "Just wanted you to know, we've already seized over $2 million in drugs and weapons from the locations the suspects revealed. You started something big tonight, Sergeant." Cooper passed a highway billboard advertising the local news channel and had to smile when he saw they were already promoting Breaking News. Soldier takes down criminal gang at rest stop. Some of his army training instructors would probably laugh at how much attention the simple self-defense situation was getting. Another call came in, this time from his commanding officer at Fort Bragg. "Cooper," the colonel said, "I'm seeing you all over the news. Well done, soldier. The Army couldn't ask for better publicity. Expect some media requests when you get back from leave." The rain grew heavier, and Cooper focused on his driving. He was tired from the long day, but knowing he was just an hour from home kept him alert. In his mind, he could already picture Emma running to hug him, and Sarah's warm smile welcoming him back. A state trooper car passed him going the other way, and Cooper saw the officer flash his lights in recognition. Word had obviously spread among law enforcement about what had happened. He gave a small wave in return. His phone buzzed again. This time it was the elderly Korean War veteran from the rest stop. Someone had given him Cooper's number. "Son, I just wanted to say again how proud you made this old soldier tonight. You showed those youngsters what a real military man is all about, protecting the innocent and standing up to bullies." Cooper thanked him warmly. The respect of a veteran from another era meant more to him than any media attention or social media fame. As he drove through the rainy night, Cooper reflected on how a simple rest stop incident had turned into something so much bigger. But most importantly, he was almost home. After 15 months of missing his family, facing danger in Afghanistan, and now this unexpected adventure at the rest stop, he was finally just a few miles away from the people he loved most. At exactly midnight, Cooper's Honda Civic turned onto his familiar street in Columbus, Ohio. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement shiny under the streetlights. Despite the late hour, he could see lights on in his house. Sarah and Emma were still awake, waiting for him. Before he could even turn off the engine, the front door burst open. 8-year-old Emma ran out in her Pokemon pajamas, her long brown hair flying behind her. Sarah followed close behind, trying to tell Emma to slow down, but their daughter was too excited to listen. "Daddy, Daddy," Emma shouted, running straight to the car. Cooper stepped out just in time to catch her as she jumped into his arms. She was bigger than he remembered. 15 months was a long time in the life of a growing child. "My little soldier," Cooper said, holding her tight and kissing the top of her head. He looked up to see Sarah walking towards them, tears of joy in her eyes. Still holding Emma, he pulled his wife into a tight embrace. For a moment, they just stood there in the quiet street, a family finally reunited. "We saw you on TV, Daddy," Emma exclaimed as they walked toward the house. "You were on the news. My friend Jenny's mom called and said they showed you fighting the bad guys. Are you a superhero now?" Sarah laughed, wiping happy tears from her eyes. She wouldn't go to bed until she saw the story on the news. Our phone hasn't stopped ringing. Seems like everyone we know saw what happened. Inside their home, Cooper noticed new pictures on the walls, Emma's recent art projects on the refrigerator, and a welcome home daddy banner that Sarah and Emma must have made while waiting for him. The house smelled like chocolate chip cookies. Sarah had been stress baking while waiting for news. "Are you hungry?" Sarah asked, already heading to the kitchen. "I made your favorite cookies, and there's leftover lasagna we can heat up." She paused, looking at him with concern. "Unless you're too tired? It's been such a long day for you." Cooper smiled, setting Emma down but keeping hold of her hand. "I'm never too tired for your cooking," he said. "But first, I have something for a certain young lady." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the chocolate bar he'd bought earlier at the gas station, before all the excitement at the rest stop. Emma's eyes lit up when she saw her favorite candy. "You remembered," she squealed, hugging him again. It was a small thing, but to Cooper, her joy made everything, the long deployment, the incident at the rest stop, all of it, worth it. As they sat in the kitchen, Cooper eating lasagna while Emma nibbled her chocolate and Sarah made coffee, the TV in the living room was still showing news coverage of the rest stop incident. The reporters were calling it a perfect storm of justice. How one soldier's bathroom break had led to the takedown of a major criminal organization. "Your colonel called while you were driving," Sarah mentioned, sitting next to him. "He said the army wants to give you a commendation for your actions. And the FBI sent someone over. They left their card. They really want you to consider joining after your service ends." Cooper nodded, but his attention was on Emma, who was falling asleep at the table despite her excitement. "Time for bed, princess," he said softly. "Daddy will still be here in the morning." As he carried his sleepy daughter up to her room, Cooper noticed her walls were covered with pictures of soldiers and police officers, her heroes, she told him during their video calls. Now she had a new story to tell her friends about her daddy, the soldier who stopped the bad guys. Tucking Emma into bed, Cooper kissed her forehead. "Daddy," she mumbled sleepily, "I'm glad you're home. And I'm glad you helped those people at the rest stop." "Me too, sweetheart," Cooper whispered. "Me too." Later, sitting with Sarah on their porch, Cooper finally felt the tension of the long day leaving his body. The rest stop incident would make headlines for weeks, but right now, none of that mattered. He was home, with his family, where he belonged. Sometimes, he thought, the greatest victories aren't the ones that make the news. They're the simple moments of coming home to the people you love.